All right, today we are joined with Don Wakamatsu. What's going on, man?
How you doing, buddy?
Hey, man, I'm doing really good. Welcome to the Lions
Well,
Den.
thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, it's been a minute. It's been a
Yeah,
minute.
yeah.
But I've actually selfishly been waiting for this moment a long time. You know what I'm saying? Um, when I was a kid, man, I don't know why, but I was always around like older people.
Yeah.
I'm not calling you old.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
I was going to bring
I
that up.
I'm just calling you older. You know what I'm saying? And I just love listening to wisdom, man,
Yeah.
from those that are older than myself. And so for me, man, I'm hyped that you're here.
Well, the older you get, the less you know, right?
Oh, here we go. Here we
Or at
go.
least you find out you don't know.
Oh
Right?
man.
Yeah.
So Don Wakamatsu, for those who don't know you, Wakamatsu, man, you guys aren't necessarily from Iowa. You know what I
No,
mean?
no.
Tell me about the last name, ethnicity. You know what I'm saying, and just your background, man.
Wakamatsu's Japanese. I'm half Japanese, half Irish. Come from a farming background in Hood River, Oregon. Uh, my grandparents on my Japanese side were interned during the war, so there's quite a bit of history there, and probably what kind of helped me through my career sometimes is looking back at them and the struggles that they went through. I think everybody has to have something in their life to reflect on and to motivate them, and that's been one for me. Them being in the camps and knowing how humble they were coming out of that, and how hard they worked to succeed, and that's kind of been my role model. Both my grandparents and my father. My father was not really an educated man out of college, but became a very successful general contractor in the San Francisco Bay Area, building buildings and
Wow.
skyscrapers, and done a lot in his life. So came from humble beginnings, but taught me a lot.
Wow. You talked about the internment camps and things of that nature. How much of that do you as you're older now, as you are further removed from the stories and just those first encounters with these things that were shared with you by your parents? How much of that I guess the way I would put it is, do you lean on, do you draw on, do you find yourself going back to thinking about that more now as you're older?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, it's so that I can pass it on to my kids. It doesn't
Yes.
get lost in the family history. And so, do I use it or think about it every day? No, but I think it's important to keep the message. With all the political stuff going on now, I think every family has some kind of story like that. And like I said, I draw on it because my grandfather, my grandparents went through a lot, but came out on the right side,
Mm-hmm.
came out in a very positive way, and never really. I think the lesson, just like in the game of baseball, if you think about how much we fail in this game, right? It's not how you handle success, it's how you handle failure. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's kind of the leftover messages, that no matter what happens to you in the past, there's always a potentially a good story in the future. And that's what I live by, is to be as positive, and especially as a coach.
Mm-hmm.
Your job really is to be able to maintain a consistency to help these guys handle the negativity and the failure in this game to succeed. So
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of an oxymoron, but it's kind of what we live for as coaches.
That's good, man. You're one of the most calmest. You're theoretical, you're philosophical, but you're also very pragmatic, very even keeled, even tempered. Where does that come from?
Uh, I think I have a thirst to read, to learn, to continue to grow, especially in the changing times of our game. Our game's changed. I've been in it. This is my 36th year, I believe.
Wow.
So I've seen a lot, and I've seen a lot of guys come and go, and I've seen a lot of changes over the last few years in the analytical side, the changes in the way kids are raised and the way they view things, and social media and all that. So I think if you're not educating yourself, if you're not continuing to grow with the times, then this game will leave you behind. And so that's what I was saying earlier, is that as you get older, when you think you know everything and you start diving into that, you realize there's so much more to learn, and that's
Yes.
what keeps you I guess, fresh in a sense, and that's kind of my goal, is to be able to stay up with the times, to be able to relate with players, and constantly learn.
That's good. You know, as a coach, as a teacher, as you've just mentioned, somebody who has seen the game through generations now. What would you say is the most important skill, mental quality for a player to have in this day and age?
That's one thing I don't think's changed since I started, and for me, it's really about being a great self-evaluator. You know, it's interesting with the analytical data now, and how much we gain in knowledge, especially say playing against a different team and trying to understand. You know, when we have pitch FX and we know heat maps and we know all this data, but from a pitcher's standpoint, if you can't execute it, that information is useless. As a hitter, if I can't cover a pitch that I know is coming, it's useless. So I think understanding your weaknesses before we ever go to an opponent, you know, is probably the most valuable thing. And a lot of guys, especially in their early careers, they want to work on their strength and continue to grow, because that gives them positive feedback. They don't want to face the negativity of not being good at something. And I think we were talking about it the other day, is I think it's valuable to watch your opponent sometimes, especially at your own position, to say, what does that guy do and what can I take from that and build in my own repertoire. So being able to reflect on your performance, reflect on your ability and lack of abilities is critical.
So self-evaluation for you is king. I mean, that's what I'm hearing. Self-evaluation is king.
Absolutely.
What's the best way? If somebody were to say, well, how do I do it? Well, how would you respond to that in terms of the best way to properly self-evaluate?
Well, I think the first thing, and again, depending on the level you're at, but at this level, because of the amount of pressure that's put on you to perform in front of 30, 40,000 people a night, it's very difficult to change. But understanding that to ask for help is probably one of the most valuable things you can do.
That's powerful.
Right? A lot of guys are scared to expose themselves to say, I don't know this play, I don't know this certain hitting technique. But to ask for help is critical, and understand that there's so many guys, especially as we've grown in baseball. There's more and more coaches now than there ever was. Sports psychologists, nutritionists, strength and conditioning coaches, and each one of those departments are here for one reason, and that's to help you succeed. And I think when you accept that and utilize that to build your own career, you're going to be better off for it. Sometimes, again, because of the pressure, we kind of hold up a little bit, and we don't want to expose that we don't know those things, and it's okay to do that.
I mean, what you just said is very powerful, because you're talking about the highest level of sport, right? And you said the people, the players, the performers, the highest level of sport, one of the most difficult things for them to do is to ask for help.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing.
Wow, man. Wow. So that's from a player's perspective, right?
Yeah.
I remember, I think it was last year, I asked you, just some advice, and you gave me some very powerful advice. I still remember it to this day. I said, hey, Wak, what do I need to do, to be effective while I'm here? And you told me, you said you need to listen to these guys. You need to listen, right? And you also said that a lot of young coaches, these are your words, a lot of young coaches, they can't wait to share their knowledge. They can't wait. You just got to be patient, let it come, and listen.
Yeah.
And I still remember that to this day, and I still execute that to this day. Is there anything else that you would add to that in terms of advice that you would give a young coach coming up, or a coach who's coaching professional athletes?
I think you got to look at the macro, and the macro for me is no matter where you're at, even at this level, I think coaching, if you look in terms, is really about building better men, mentorship, right? First and foremost. So regardless of technique or what we're trying to do basically on the field, if we build better men both on and off the field, and how do you do that? We're in the business of relationships, right? Of building relationships, and what are relationships built on? Trust. So I think listening to know enough about a player's background, to know that maybe there's a single parent, maybe there's other issues in his past. If you don't know that going in, I think you're behind the eight ball, because players want to be understood, right? And so I think taking that time, and what he says it all the time, it's about the process. Well, the process goes along with building that relationship, to where there's trust in there, and then slowly implementing as the player wants that information. So it's kind of a give and take. On any given day, you're going to walk in that clubhouse and know that this guy's ready to accept something, or something happened off the field that maybe he's not ready to talk about anything about baseball. So now you're more of a father figure or a brother figure to those guys. And so, again, we have a grueling schedule. The 2 years that I was involved in Kansas City, we went to the World Series 2 years in a row. Lost in Game 7 and won in Game 5. That's 420 games in 2 years.
Yeah.
That's a grind. Right?
Yeah.
That's more than you're going to spend more time with these players than you are with your family. So you have to understand that there's things off the field that are going to affect how these guys come in every day, and you gotta accept that challenge when you walk in that clubhouse to kind of have your radar up to say, where are these guys at that moment, right? And understand that, you know, when is a good time to talk to these guys about maybe they're going through a slump or they just struck out 4 times in a game. Do you go up to them then, or do you give it some time? You let them sleep on it a little bit, and when they're receptive to that. And so it doesn't matter what level you're at, building better men, knowing that you're there for them spiritually, physically, all the above, and then building that trust so you can then, increase the knowledge on the field.
Man, I mean, that's very rich. That's very rich. I mean, we can just spend the rest of the time talking about that, in the midst of how the game has changed. And I don't know if you were reading my notes, man, but you kind of teed it up for this next question I was going to ask you.
Enough notes on the board there,
yeah. So in terms of Don Wakamatsu, you have a unique lens. I mean, as a player, as a coach, as a bench coach, as a manager, and you've experienced the World Series, and that whole world, that whole realm. What does it take, man? Talk to us about the mentality, the camaraderie, the environment, the mindset, right, of a World Series team. What it has, what it doesn't have, and how do we get there?
How much time do we have?
Hey, man, we got as much time as you need, man.
It's interesting because the game's changed at every level. Whether it's club baseball now, the way kids are indoctrinated, the exposure that they get at an early age. I think some things are extremely good because some of these younger players now are used to playing under pressure. Probably the tough part of that is that they're not used to playing per se with a club the whole year. I had 2 sons that went through that whole process of club baseball and into professional baseball. And in club baseball, I know they played on several different teams because they were good players. They were asked to play for this team over there, and in that you kind of lose a little bit of understanding to go from a team from the start of the year all the way through the end. So to experience that level of success at the major league level in Kansas City, it was the first time that I experienced that true spirit of a team since once I played back in high school or college, right? Because you're talking about the financial resources that these guys, in a lot of cases, you're dealing with several different millionaires, right?
Yeah.
Their own independent corporation.
Yeah.
Right. And the challenge is to be able to bring those guys together to be completely selfless and to have each other's back. And it's interesting because you start out during the year and everybody's trying to hit 300. Everybody's trying to pitch a no-hitter, right? And so there's a lot of individual stats that go on. And as you start to realize, hey, we got a chance at the playoff, you start to see that bonding. And organically, I think there's a lot of things that happen to successful teams, and some not always good, that brings them together. We had some tragedy in Kansas City. We had 3 parents die. But every time something like that happened, you felt it emotionally. You felt us come together for that person, right? And so I'm not saying that's what's going to have to take place, but that's the kind of mentality that we have to have each other's back, because it's 25 is 1. It can't be 24. It's got to be all 25, and that's a tremendous movement. That's tremendous power in that, and so I think to be able to experience that and to be able to talk to a club, as you're building that process, those are some of the things in the back of your mind that you're constantly saying, you know what, this guy did something today that maybe wasn't for the team. It wasn't for the organization. It was a little bit selfless or selfish. And so, do you address it at that point, or do you start to get them to understand and to buy in? And it's an amazing thing when you start coming to the ballpark every day, going, "What can I do for the club?" and realize that I'll always play better for that. The more you give, the more you get, and that's a hard concept to grasp sometimes for players, because they're just thinking about, I'm going to take care of my family, and I'm going to make all this money, and and here we are still at the grassroots of playing baseball and bringing them back to one. And so it is important to understand that, if you come to give, you'll get a lot more.
Wow. So as far as a championship, team and an organization, you said that in the beginning of the year on this World Series team, there was a lot of individualism as far as like, hey, let me get mine. And then you said that it got to a point where, when you come to the ballpark, you're asking yourself, what can I do to the club? Was there a specific time that there was, a switch flipped, or did it happen gradually?
Well, in our case, 2014, there's 2 points I'll bring up. One is a player, Mike Moustakas. Mike Moustakas, tremendous talent, still having a great year this year with Milwaukee. He was still a fairly young player. Hit 159 for the year. Sent down a time or two. We go into the playoffs. He hits 5 home runs and is arguably one of our best players. So what changed? Was it mechanical, or was it all of a sudden he was playing for something bigger than himself? Right. The other thing is we fought tooth and nail to the end. We got a wild card berth for the first time in 30 years. Right, of being back to the world, or in the playoff scenario. And we played Oakland in, I can't even remember, it might have been a 13 extra inning game. And we won that game, and the light flipped on.
Wow. That
all of a sudden we're in the playoffs, and we're a pretty good team. And we went on to lose finally in Game 7 to San Francisco. But it was an amazing run. We swept Anaheim that year, which had the best record in baseball, 3 games. But it was almost like, okay, now, hey, we believe we're a pretty good team.
So you can't have that light bulb moment in Oakland until you do what?
Well, I think the biggest thing is a lot of our players, and I remember Ned Yost talking about this, and it took, he said a lot of times when you're molding a team, especially of a bunch of young players, it takes time. And in his case, he'd managed the Milwaukee Brewers and the Ryan Brauns and the players over there, that it took him about 3 years. And we happened to be around that 3-year period with Eric Hosmer and Mike Moustakas and Lorenzo Cain and Escobar and those players. And they started gelling together. And like I said, when they started seeing that we had potentially the chance to make that wild card, there was a momentum that was building. And it was neat to watch as a coach to say, okay, they're starting to come together as one. We sweep Anaheim, we come together as even stronger and stronger and stronger, and so that's our biggest challenge, like I said, and is getting these players to understand that if they come every single day, that it's not about going 4 for 4. It's not about pitching a no-hitter. It's about, can I scratch and claw and get on base? Can I draw a walk here? Do I come with the accountability that I prepared to play this game the right way?
Wow, that's powerful.
Yeah.
That's powerful, man. There's so much I want to ask you, man. So earlier we talked about you talked about leadership, right? Leadership. We're building men, relationships, which leads to trust. So my next question is: in the advent of analytics, in the cacophony of information,
good word.
Hey, man. Every now and then you got to drop that word of the day. You know what I mean? In this litany of information, that we're surrounded with, that you guys are surrounded with as a coaching staff, that the players have to digest, consume, apply to their craft, right? You're talking about building up people. People. Yeah. Trust. Trust doesn't show up in the analytics line. Yeah. So what place does analytics have in the relationship business, right, of dealing with people? And what place does relationship trust have in the analytics? I'm asking you to think deep here, man.
Ooh, that's a tough one. Well, I think this year's kind of a poster child, with Woody being an innovative new age manager in a sense, coming from a very successful program with the Dodgers and seeing it work over there. You're seeing certain organizations, Houston Astros, the success they've had over the last couple of years from being an organization that lost several hundred game seasons. Again, I think a lot of players, to a certain extent, even very talented players, will get to a certain level, and then without that data again allows you to understand what you're good at and what you're not, and to let your ego go enough to say, okay, I understand where now, because of the data, I know where the holes are, right? And now to be able to come up with a game plan. And there's several players throughout baseball now that have. Justin Turner with the Dodgers was up and down, maybe a potentially released player to a superstar, with and nothing against him, with not the most talent, and now he's arguably one of the best hitters in baseball. J.D. Martinez was a guy that got released. So there's several of these stories out there now that no doubt in my mind, those guys transform themselves through information, through data, through looking at their holes and plugging the holes through analytical data and swing changes. And so now it's just the information age is here, and if you don't subscribe to that, you're going to get left behind. Because you look at our offense this year alone, we were one of the best offenses in baseball. So now they came in approaching us like we were the offense of last year. Well, we adapted in spring training. Well, now the opponent's adapting to us because the information is so detailed, and we have to constantly adjust to that. We talk about pitchers now the trends over the last couple of years where they're throwing high fastballs. Now you're starting to see a lot of home runs because hitters are adapting to that. They're changing their swing planes to get to those pitches. More strikeouts, but we will see a change, whether it's next year. We've already seen it change a little bit more and using the sinker a little bit more because hitters are adapting. The game is changing and evolving faster than at any point than I've ever seen in 30 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm going to switch gears on you right here, Walt. When you look at the trajectory of people's lives, there are always points in which there are defining moments that change us and make us the people we are today. What would you say has been the most difficult thing that you've had to endure as a person that has had a lasting impact on who you are today, sitting in that chair?
I still think, again, it's a mindset, but I think if you look at the failures, I mean, I've had plenty in my career. I've been released. I was released a couple times as a player. Made it to the big leagues. Made it to be a manager. Got fired as a manager. Still here, right? It's the ability to get back up after those failures and to reflect on those and say, okay, are they always personal? We tend to take it personal. And if we take it personal, it's difficult to get back up. Instead of looking at the circumstance and say, I always look at it, it was a blessing that I was in that position in the first place. Got an opportunity to play pro baseball, got released. Okay, now where am I? Do I go work, or is this still my passion? Do I still believe in myself enough to say, okay, that was a learning lesson, and let's attack it again? And same thing with managing, same thing with being the bench coach and with 5-6 different managers. And I've been fortunate. I've been with 15 different organizations as a player, as a coach. There's not too many people in baseball that can say that. Well, why did that happen? One, I think it was predestined maybe through God. I'll buy that. And the same thing is that he gave me the strength to get back up, right? To adapt and adjust. As I mentioned with the J.D. Martinez type of story, he got back up. Now he's one of the best hitters in baseball. He could have succumbed to what people thought, or if he didn't have the inner confidence to say, you know what, I can make these adjustments and be the player I always thought of. And I always feel like, dare to dream.
Yeah.
Who's to say you can't be the best hitter in baseball? I don't care who you are.
Somebody has to be the best.
Yeah, but don't let people squash your dreams. And
That's
so
right.
you know, that's how I get up every morning. We talk about how you doing. You know, we say it's a crime to feel this good.
It's a crime, baby. It's a crime. That's the best, man.
So.
You got some of the best one-liners, man. I tell you what, man. It's a crime, baby.
Yeah.
So one word. You can only answer in one word.
Man.
You're a man of deep insight, but I'm only giving you one word here. So here we go. What's the biggest thing missing right now in the world of sport?
Passion.
Wow. Passion.
Yeah.
What is the one thing that you are the most excited about right now at this point in your career? One word.
Where this one
word, baby. One word.
Direction.
Wow. Now I'm going to let you elaborate on that because that's kind of deep. And I see what you're doing. You're trying to set it up, man.
Yeah.
Explain that one, please.
I like what's going on here, right? I like to be a part of something that's moving in the right direction. Of all the things we talk about, I think this is I'm a part of a coaching staff that's as hungry as maybe I've ever been a part of. That has that thirst to make people better, and because of that, I think the players are going to get better, and I think we got a real good chance of winning here.
Okay, I like it. Next one. What is the biggest lie that players? One word. What's the biggest lie players tell themselves? This one you can say, you can use a couple words, but what's the biggest lie that players tell themselves? I'm okay. Wow, that's
just
a good
struck
one.
out 4 times. I'm okay. No, you're not. You're not going to sleep tonight.
Oh man, that's good. What is the most common mistake that young coaches make?
The word would be recognition.
Ooh. So the failure to recognize.
I think a lot of times you're so driven that you want to be recognized.
Ah, got you. I see what you're saying. Yeah. Okay.
Right? And it goes back to being a good teammate is really what you give. I think if you can come to the ballpark every day as a coach and not worry about getting credit, about giving, right? I don't care if I get recognized. I don't care if anybody knows who I am. But did I impact, 5 or 6 guys that day, right? Somebody used to joke a long time ago, says, how do you know you're a good coach? And they said, by the amount of Christmas cards you get, right?
Yeah. Tell you what, man. Hey, sometimes the most, the quietest one in the room is the most powerful one in the room, man. Yeah. That's awesome. So as we close, first of all, man, hey, thank you again for coming to the, to the Lions Den.
Honored.
This has been great, man. And we're definitely, you got to promise to do a part 2.
All right.
Because this is just you know what I mean? This is just, So as we close, you're in a room full of aspiring professionals from all walks of life, and you get a chance to share with them the most powerful piece of advice or wisdom that can impact them. What are you telling the room?
Time. Understand time. I think if you understand how many hours there are in the day, there's plenty to do. There's plenty of time to do everything. Work out, read, learn a language, get better. So I think wasting time, because that guy next to you, that guy in the next locker, is always working as hard or harder. So when you start to organize time and realize that there's plenty of room for growth on and off the field, and that's where, I think the big change was social media, the phones, being on social media to get recognition back is a dangerous thing. To spend time watching a movie or not participating in things rather than just being on your phone. And that's time. They say the average person spends 3.5 hours on their phone.
Social media, yeah. 3 to 4 hours a day on social media.
Could you be lifting? Could you be talking to you, getting better? Right? So I think time's a very important lesson to learn at an early age.
Wow. That's powerful, man.
Yeah.
That's powerful. Well, Walkman, I appreciate you. I want you to, if you don't mind, man, I would love for you to do the honors here. Hold on.
This is a closeout?
It's the closeout, baby.
All right, it's a wrap.
Oh, yes, sir.